Hello, good morning and welcome. It's Tuesday, April the 8th. Chances of a sustained global trade war rose overnight after China vowed never to give in to blackmail and to fight to the end. Hours after President Trump vowed to slap a further 50% on top of existing tariff levels, which would take US import taxes on Chinese goods to over 100%. My goodness. Hello there. My name is Sam Coates of Sky News.
And I'm Anne McElvoy from Politico. Last night, the investment giant BlackRock CEO Larry Fink said most CEOs he talks to think the US is already in recession, and he reckons markets could fall by another 20%. He said the economy is weakening as we speak.
It's grim, grim, grim. At this point, Anne, I'm actually reminded of the old Monty Python adage that things aren't maybe as black as they've been painted, but that's only because of the lack of black paint.
Oh, well, there's probably been a new tariff on that, Sam. It's the last day Parliament is sitting before recess. That means tomorrow is the First Amendment. The Liberal Democrats can call for the Commons to be recalled. It's off until Tuesday, April the 22nd. And so will we be, though, back on Monday to keep us all on our toes for the week ahead, given the pace of events we thought we should be. And if things get really bumpy, like Avengers Assemble, we will reform.
I can't wait to see the uniform. And actually, I see plenty of reasons for that happening. The deal between the US and the UK, the sort of quickie mini trade deal, which we're told is done, but President Trump hasn't signed. Well, if that actually comes to fruition, that's a reason for Ed Davey to call for MPs to come back. What happens if there's steel renationalisation? That seems to be getting closer to happening. To save British steel, I can see MPs having to come back to talk about that, all sorts of things. It's a very serious time, Anne, but with a little bit of sort of end of term feel, I actually wanted to start elsewhere. And I just wanted to tell you about a conversation I had last week with a Labour MP. Now, I'm not going to name them, but they actually asked that we extend this podcast. Now, you know, famously, we don't go on for more than 20 minutes where possible in order to give you everything we can about the day ahead. But this Labour MP said, look, please can we go on to 25 minutes because that's how long it takes to straighten my hair in the morning. Not for her double speed, it seems. What do you say to that?
I say massive respect to someone who deals with her hair for fully 25 minutes in the morning. She's one camera-ready MP.
I know. I also heard a story this week of a political consultancy which is hiring new members of staff where they get asked, what podcast do you listen to regularly? And the right answer is this one, which is actually rather lovely.
Enough self-indulgence, well, reluctantly. So to our day job. And today, Keir Starmer is before the liaison committee. That's the group of senior MPs, all select committee chairs, for a 90-minute grilling. Wes Streeting also out and about talking up GP recruitment since October. That's the month he got that 22 billion from Rachel Reeves for the NHS. So I suspect he wants to have something to show for it.
And it's Tuesday morning, so let's start, as we always do, with the YouGov Times Sky poll. And in a moment, actually, we've got a whole bunch of exclusive polling from YouGov just for this podcast, Anne. But we'll start with the voting intention. That has Labour out in front on 24%. That's unchanged. Reform unchanged on 23%. Tories on 22%. That's up 1%. Liberal Democrats on 17, that's up 3. By the way, that 17 points for the Lib Dems is the highest since 2017. And that does reflect a kind of average level of support being a bit up across the polls. Greens on 9%. Lib Dems running a bit high. I'm just going to give you a little snapshot of the exclusive polling, which I've done because it's the end of term, and then let's have a chat about it. We asked, which of the following do you think would make the best Prime Minister? Now, the most popular is actually don't know and none of the above. But of those who gave an answer, coming out on top, actually, is Keir Starmer. So, best Prime Minister, number 1, Keir Starmer on 21%. Number 2, Nigel Farage on 16%. Number 3, Ed Davey on 7%. And number 4, bottom of the pile on 5% is Kemi Badenoch. It's kind of broadly the same pattern when you ask who's doing well. Kemi comes bottom on 14%. Nigel Farage just edging ahead of Keir Starmer. And when you do a deep dive into the numbers, Anne, which I've done this morning, and you look at the attitudes of people who voted Tory last year in the general election and their attitudes to Kemi, I think there are actually some quite frightening numbers if you're inside CCHQ, if you're inside the Conservative Party. Just 37% of people who voted Tory last year in the general election thinks Kemi's doing well. That's less than the 38% who think she's doing badly. Just 19% of people who voted Tory last year think that Kemi should be PM, less than the 20% who think it should be Farage. This is Tory voters from last year. Less than 1 in 5 think that Kemi should be PM, and Kemi and the Tories come bottom of the list of leaders and parties who are doing well holding Labour to account. So we often talk, Anne, about this idea that just criticising the government, letting the government muck up helps the Tories. But we are in a different political world where it's not entirely clear that the Tories are the automatic beneficiaries from that. I suggest to you it's really, really grim for Kemi Badenoch.
I love I suggest to you, I'm thinking of Rumpole of the Bailey, if anyone is able to, and I put it to you. I think that's
usually because you swipe back very hard and we love it.
Absolutely. Guilty. I've just found you guilty, and that will sort out the crime afterwards. A couple of things that stand out from that polling that you've got there, Sam. One is, as you say, not good for Kemi Badenoch in terms of making impact or profiting in some way from the government's present woes. So you can understand why there's a bit of a futures market going on there in Robert Jenrick. His shares seem to be rising in him as a competitor. But let's, in all fairness to Liberal Democrats who often feel they get underanalyzed and missed out, that is quite an uptick for them. And as you say, it has been sustained across a lot of polling. And here today it's at 17%. So that looks pretty nice for them. Partly, I think it is a lot of other things that are going on. People are looking around thinking, I want to make some sort of statement. What about the Liberal Democrats then? Are they maybe the party that I'm looking at again with some interest? Partly Ed Davey with I loved his Buy British or rather Buy Scottish campaign in his video. Partly also, I think that the tone that he's striking, sort of chin-jutting against Donald Trump, is something that neither of the other two main parties are doing, and indeed Reform doesn't want to do, because it has tacked under Nigel Farage a bit closer to the US. So even if we just take, Sam, that fun video where he's encouraging us to buy British, or rather buy Highland Scottish, is a sign of sort of up with this we will not put, which seems to appeal to people who, in a sense, are not getting it from the main parties. What do you reckon?
I mean, as much as you might dislike listening to an Ed Davey TikTok video with the sound of YMCA in the backdrop, the Liberal Democrats have a distinctive position on the question of Donald Trump, as you say, and that does look like it might be working. I'm told actually that Ed Davey's visiting some of the more ambitious places on the local election campaign trail, Conservative target council areas, as we sort of gear up to local elections. They claim that Kemi is going a bit more towards heartland. I haven't immediately been able to check that with them, but it just is a fact that they're up to, I think it's pretty much as I was saying, the highest level of polling for them since 2017. So they'll be pretty pleased about that.
And it is their good ground game, isn't it? This kind of fight when it's local. I was about to say town and village people, but it is something. If when they've got their mojo, they can do quite well. Let's see if it really brings them up when it comes to the results.
The political backdrop, the global political backdrop of the tariff war that Donald Trump has sparked and China has escalated towards, actually is the backdrop for the local elections, whether we like it or not. And that is the context for what Reform is doing at the moment. Now, Nigel Farage is up in your hometown of Durham. There's a visit there around steel. Do you want to just tell us what Nigel Farage is doing? Because it actually links into the sort of global and main domestic politics of today.
Absolutely plugged right in there by reform strategists and those who organise the grid for getting Nigel Farage and co around the country. So yes, campaigning in my native Durham, high hopes there of winning control of the county council. I have to say, if you grew up there in the Labour one party estate, you do still pinch yourself at that sort of thing. I know we just talk about, it's the red wall and all bets are off, but it does seem very strange if you're just used to having that solid Labour control. And it still is very strong, Sam, on the council. 49 Labour members there, 28 independents. Conservatives and Liberal Democrats have been creeping up. So if reform do take that, and remember, it's also a university city and prosperous in large part, as well as the poorer outskirts and the villages, well, that would be quite a leap forward. Then we see Richard Tice and Andrea Jenkins, obviously a former Conservative, being foregrounded, thereby reform heading off to Scunthorpe, to the steel plant there, Chinese-owned. Resonates, does it not, today, given that strong Chinese pushback on tariffs? And I think the tough line of questioning here is whether that kind of MAGA worldview that Nigel Farage has been assiduously courting, his closeness to Donald Trump, all those pictures of them, smiling together, thumbs up, all the rest of it, does that take a bit of a hit now that we are beginning to feel the backlash here to those tariffs, and particularly the threat, not least in Scunthorpe, which is really a steelworks that's right on the edge of viability, where the government's saying it's done pretty much as it can do to bail it out. Does this complicate matters, Sam, for Farage and the way that he approaches Donald Trump? Is it the moment of reckoning, or is it just kind of wave and sail on by in the reform kind of way?
So at the moment, voters, as they so often are, feel a bit schizophrenic. If there is a negative impact on Nigel Farage and Nigel Farage's Reform Party because of what Donald Trump's doing, we're not seeing it, we're not picking it up in the polls just yet, even though Donald Trump polls amongst the worst, amongst Brits in the world, most unpopular here in the UK of pretty much any country. But I think that judgment will take place over a longer time scale. Talking to people in Reform, they know that their fortunes, because they mimic some of the things that MAGA and Donald Trump do, are tied to how those things play out. They think particularly the DOGE stripping public spending effort by Donald Trump, which is something that they actively talk about when people like Richard Tice are in the TV studios, that needs to be seen to have had a positive, not a negative impact over the next 18 months or so in order to rebound well on them. It's a great question whether or not the tariff war is actually going to have a negative impact on Nigel Farage and his party at the moment. But just at the moment, it doesn't particularly seem to have harmed them. But we will. But it's one. It's absolutely one to keep an eye on, because you can bet your bottom dollar that one thing that will unite the Conservative Party and the Labour Party will be to tie as closely as possible Farage and Trump, come what may, in the weeks and months ahead.
All right, so let's get back then to the big story. We all know what it is. There are so many ramifications of what is now unfolding on tariffs and how different countries and institutions are looking at it. Sam, what do you think is most important in your notebook?
So when you hear people like Larry Fink saying that the stock markets have a long way to fall, and we'll see whether they do, you realise that we are at a moment of crisis. Now, stock markets going down is bad news for pension holders. It's bad news for people who hold certain types of savings. It is bad news it is likely to just depress growth generally. We've been through moments like this before, Anne, and I think my starting point when looking at the UK response is a comparison with the 2008 financial crisis and the 2020 COVID crisis. Because back in both of those, Britain was able to activate a big bazooka, a central government bazooka. Back in 2008, there was the nationalisation of the banks. And in 2020, there was the furlough scheme for COVID that allowed people to stay at home, funded by the taxpayer. There was a lot of money that governments could suddenly get access to via borrowing in order to help people. Now, I'm not saying that there should be a big bazooka this time. But the bottom line is that there just can't be, because Britain has borrowed so much over the last 15 years that just simply isn't an option. Nor is there really an option for a massive stimulus from the Bank of England. There might be slightly faster interest rate cuts, but that has to be balanced against the threat of higher inflation. What's really striking me about Keir Starmer at the moment is just how many options are off the table right now. And that is the thing that means that their main poise, their main approach has to be one of deregulation. Yesterday, we saw that with the car industry, which comes with its own trade-offs. And we'll hear more about that in the pharmaceutical and probably the steel industry over the next few days. But there just isn't big sums of the sort that we had in 2008 and 2020 to deal with a crisis.
One of the things that struck me, I'm all about the micro, is there's plots and plans that we'd been hearing from the Chancellor about trying to get back on course and get over this bumpy period in which she's really had to talk about those welfare cuts and sort of say, look, I also have a plan for UK PLC. A lot of that is affected in ways I think we're just beginning to understand by the scale of this tariff onslaught. And something a financial advisor was pointing out to me yesterday, they were getting prepared for Rachel Reeves saying, now that we're in the beginning of the new tax year, people are starting to look at things like their ISAs and where they're going to go in the year ahead if they've got a bit of money to save. Rachel Reeves is saying, not so fast, you might get away with it this year, but I'm going to go after ISAs, bring down the amount that you can save tax-free, because I want people to put money into the markets and I want the pension funds to get, fatter because people go and invest in Britain. Well, that all sounded pretty much okay. Not everyone loved it if they like the safety of ISAs. But now it really looks dubious because, Sam, do you think you can actually go to the public and to savers, particularly risk-averse Brits, and say, hey, we've got this massive bear market going on. We think the pension funds are looking wobbly and may look even wobblier as this unfolds. So we'd really like you to put your money into them. So I think that lots of things are going to have to be revisited. And I think, as you pointed out in your opening remarks in that, things just look like the options are much tighter for the government. And when they find a bit of wriggle room, someone comes and closes it down, usually Donald Trump.
One of the questions being asked by Labour MPs is whether or not this government can end up borrowing a bit more than the current fiscal rules, the self-imposed borrowing limits, currently allow for. Now, yesterday, I went to the West Midlands. I went to Solihull, to the Jaguar Land Rover plant. And since there's all this debate, there was a story in the front of the Observer saying that the fiscal rules might be moved around, might be changed. By the way, Downing Street and the Treasury deny this on background. But I put it to Keir Starmer. I basically wanted him to commit on camera to the world that he would back, come what may, the fiscal rules. Now, I want you to listen quickly to the question, and it's actually a speeded up version of the answer. You can read the full text, which goes on for 90 seconds on our social media accounts. But just listen to how he handled it in the key bit of his answer.
You say, without hesitation, that you will keep Rachel Reeves' fiscal rules exactly as they are for the whole of the Parliament and not come back at any point and say events mean that they need changing.
Well, Sam, this is a moment for stepping us up, as I've just said.
It was a very straight question. The Prime Minister spoke for 90 seconds without ever actually answering it. This was the closest he came.
The reaction to the challenges of the last few days is not for us to say, well, the first thing we'll now do is to put one side our fiscal rules.
But still, that wasn't a guarantee they won't be ditched.
Really important steps today for our country. Thank you.
So, to my ear, Keir Starmer actually didn't definitively answer the question and definitively back Rachel Reeves' fiscal rules. Now, maybe he'll be asked about that again in the liaison committee today, but I did raise one arched eyebrow at the way he handled that. Downing Street were pretty cross about us pointing out this wiggle room. They said there isn't some. He backs them, but he just didn't do it himself when he was given the opportunity. It's not my fault, guys. They had a bit of a go at me. They said I was winding up other journalists and getting them to write about it. Honestly, that I think underestimates my ability to tell other hacks what to do. But I think that underlines the sensitivity of this question. Let's see if people start calling them Rachel Reeves fiscal rules in the weeks to come.
So I love you raising your eyebrow and then getting into a full-blown fight about that. It is always hard, isn't it, in the moment to say, did the Prime Minister mean to distance himself? I'm going to put in a word for the Prime Minister on this one. But at the same time, he could clearly have just restated the fiscal rules, right? That is true. Is there a desire for them to remain intact, Rachel Reeves's fiscal rules, but maybe not talk about it so much? I feel a bit the same that the Prime Minister's in that position on net zero as well, Sam. So yes, this is the policy, but can we just not talk about it terribly much? It's like, here's the thing we always end up having a row about. Let's not talk about it, as we might say.
I just think that Keir Starmer does not have a track record of political loyalty to those around him. I'll put it no more strongly than that, but he doesn't like boxing himself in. He's got rid of almost everybody else in the past. His last Shadow Chancellor, his Chief of Staff. He got rid of Morgan McSweeney as Chief of Staff. He is an axeman, and he never likes to be boxed in. So maybe it was an accident, maybe it wasn't. Only time will tell, which is a horrible way of saying we don't know. But we're coming to the end of the podcast. We're coming to the end of the last one before recess. And how are we going to cope?
Well, I'm going to leave you with the word of the day, Panican, a new party based on weak and stupid people, as Donald Trump describes doubters of his tariff policy on his Truth Social page, because, of course, what reason could there possibly be for panicking? And this, as we know, is the podcast for strong and brilliant listeners and only slightly dimbo hosts.
What a lovely way to finish. Well, Anne, if I see you sooner rather than later, it's because there's been a bit of panicking around. But if not, we'll be back on Monday for Politics at Sam and Anne's, giving you everything in recess week that will happen in the week ahead. But have a lovely few days and good luck turning off that alarm clock.
A lie-in, and see you all on Monday.
Donald Trump is heading back to the White House.
Together we can truly make America great again.
We are in for an unpredictable but fascinating 4 years.
And we're going to be following every twist and turn for the first 100 days. We'll be bringing you the latest updates and analysis first thing every morning. So join me, James Matthews.
Me, Martha Kalnick.
And me, Mark Stone.
For Trump 100, every weekday at 6 a.m, wherever you get your podcasts.